March 2020. When you think of that date, what comes to mind, right? The day that we were all grounded from flights, sent home, and our kitchen table, our kids' playroom, or even our bedroom became our home office. For some of you, you might be working back in the office now, or maybe you're still at home, or some hybrid of the two. This great reshuffle or great resignation, whatever we want to call it, where as we started to come out of the pandemic, people started taking inventory of what their career and their work really meant to them. They started looking at the value they were offering to their employer or to their clients and whether they were being rewarded in compensation or in recognition accordingly. We also know that competition got steep. Your employer right now has an interesting scenario because in the past they had to recruit from people in their own backyard, people who could reasonably get to the office and do their work. But when we were all sent home, we realized that competition is now global. And so our ability to grow our career in that environment means that the things we're going to talk about today are more important than ever before. I venture to guess your employer wants to keep you. They want to grow your talents, but you're going to have to make that easy for them and not just rely on good timing or enough time in a job to see that happen, because employers want to reduce staff turnover. They want to keep their key employees happy, and they want to know that if they invest in you, whether that's a raise or promotion, that that's a good investment for the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to unpack 6 specific areas to focus on when it comes to getting a raise or promotion in 2022. First, the title of this program was asking you, why you? Why you? Do you know why you're qualified or why your employer should want to reward your work or advance you into another position? The concept of personal branding comes to light here because your ability to be clear and confident in how you communicate your value is where you make your employer's job easy. It's where your boss doesn't have to ruminate over your past performance or your relationships or the way that you carry yourself. All of that comes bundled together beautifully into a value proposition. So the first thing to think about when I ask you why you is, are you super clear about what it is you can offer, what it is you have produced, and what that means in terms of value, not just in terms of motion or deliverables. What we knew going into the pandemic and that really got solidified is that showing up on time and delivering on budget is not enough to grow our career. Our employers want to see us adding value that moves the organization forward, thinking about things that are about growth and strategy, not just checking boxes. So if you're thinking about a raise or a promotion, especially in the next 6 months, start now to build a case for why you're qualified and should earn that additional resource or those additional resources or additional funds. Start building a case for it. Don't expect that somebody else is just going to identify that in you and hand it down from on high, so to speak. The second thing I want you to think about is, are you credible? And if you've followed me for any length of time, you know I talk a lot about credibility because credibility is the essence of brand. A brand is an expectation of an experience. And as people, we have brands, and that experience has to be trusted. It has to be seen as credible in order for it to be rewarded, referred, endorsed, and so on. So I'd ask you to think about what your credibility looks like today. Do the people that work with you trust you? Do they rely on you? Do they come to you with confidential information to get your insight? Does your employer trust you and see you as a valuable member of the team? Do you know how you're perceived? We're going to get to that one in a moment. But when we think about credibility and how to build credibility, there's a very simple formula. Values plus action gives you credibility. Pretty simple, right? until you start to unpack it. That's where it gets a little complicated. Values means, what do you stand for? What do you believe in? What is your core moral operating system, if you will? And your values might be muddled up or mixed up with your military values or your parents' values, maybe your community values or your partner's values or your social media influencers' values. But your values are yours, and they are the qualities and the values you draw upon to make go, no go decisions, right? That feels right. That feels wrong. That's a yes. That's a no. What we're drawing upon are our values, but values don't build credibility. Values in action build credibility. So if you articulate your values, and then I see proof of that, I see evidence in the way that you behave, the way you communicate, the relationships that you have online and in person, then I start seeing consistency. And consistency of values tied to action is where we earn credibility. Many of you know I do a lot of work with the military. I have been passionate about supporting those who have worn our nation's cloth here in the United States. For 12 years, I've been working with that community. My values very clearly drove me in the direction of being able to serve those who have served. But initially, I had zero credibility. I hadn't done anything. I had this value set, which was awesome. And people said, wow, congratulations. That's really to be admired. But there was no proof. So nobody trusted that my heart was in it for the right reason, or that I was truly looking to give services through mentorship and writing and speaking to help military veterans better reintegrate into civilian sectors. It wasn't until I started doing the work and showing up at military conferences, most times paying my own way to get there. And I was mentoring and coaching veterans who would reach out and say, I'm stuck and I think maybe you could help. I was writing articles and then books. I have 3 books now in the military space. And I was doing all of that because my values were driving the action. But that even still doesn't give me credibility. Credibility requires that as I'm doing the action, as you're doing the action, we are connecting it to our values. So whenever I speak in front of a military audience, on base, at a corporation, at an event, I have to make a point of making it known that I am there because I am grateful for their service to our nation, that I am there because my value of gratitude has driven me to that action. That is how I built credibility over these years. It's the service, the action, matched up with the why, the value. So think for yourself, if you believe in leadership, if serving others, mentoring, helping other people grow to their highest potential is a value of yours, for instance, are you acting that way at work? Are you finding opportunity to be collaborative and inclusive and mentoring people who may not have a direct, reflection on your work, but it's your value of service that's leading you to do that? And then if you're doing that, as awkward as it feels, and I get that it feels awkward, connect it to your value. When somebody says to you, gosh, I really appreciate you taking the time to help me like that. It meant a lot that you spent time. You need to say, I do this because it's really important to me. One of my values is service or mentoring or helping people reach their potential, whatever that is for you. Because the more times you articulate your value and people see evidence, they assign you credibility. And credibility is trust. There is no way to shortcut that process. But I'm going to complicate things even a little bit more for you when it comes to credibility, because number 3 is you have to know what your current reputation is. You have to know what credibility you already have. What reputation have you earned without even thinking about it with the people that you've interacted with, the people that you've led, the people you've reported to? What credibility, what brand have you built for yourself with the way that you are interacting? And here's a secret. Most of the clients I work with think they have a much better reputation than they actually do. So, doing some due diligence is probably really helpful here. And I get that perception and people's judgment and biases and stereotypes. Oh, these are the things we hate to talk about, right? I remember when my boys were little and I would say to them, it doesn't matter what other people think about you, it just matters what's in your heart. And I was half right, because it does matter what's in your heart. You've got to see yourself as valuable and worthy and all of this. But what we know as we grow up is that it also matters what other people perceive you to be. Because if their perception is flawed or based on wrong information or misinformation or inadequate information, their perception is what they're going to rely on to make decisions about you. So if I don't perceive you as management material, if I don't perceive you as somebody who deserves a raise, or I don't perceive you as somebody that I want on my team, that perception, again, which might be based on wrong information, is going to directly impact your opportunity. So it's important to know what perception is. What are the feelings that people around you have? I'll give you an example. So let's say Greg, we'll just use somebody named Greg, wants to be promoted into being a manager at his company. He's been with his employer for 5 years. He gets decent marks on his performance evaluations, and he seems to be well liked. People that pass him in the hallway say hi, they wave at him, smile. So he seems like everything's going fine. But he applies for the manager job and is told by his boss he's not, quote unquote, management material. Greg is devastated. He thought everything was fine. But what he hadn't done is the due diligence around his current reputation. He didn't know how his peers, how managers in other departments, how his own boss perceived him. And what he learned when he did finally start digging into this is, sure, people considered him friendly. He made eye contact, he would say hi and wave, and they made eye contact and waved back in the hallway. There's a big difference between that and being seen as somebody who's trusted, that somebody would want to have managed them. He also realized that while he got decent marks on his performance evaluation, his company looks for more exceptional marks, not just decent marks. So he was off base. There were a lot of blind spots in Greg's way. And what he could have done, here's some things he could have done to get ready for that. He could have asked his coworkers, maybe even his boss, people in other departments, to offer up 3 words to describe him. He could have just said, I'm thinking about my reputation. What are 3 words that you would use to describe me? And then be quiet and watch what comes in. And as he gathers those 3 words from a lot of different people across the organization, he can start looking at the patterns. Are they all referring to him in the same way? Are people asking, Greg who? Do they recognize his value? Do they understand that he wants to be a leader? He could have talked to managers in other departments who probably would have offered him some insight about speaking up in meetings and showing some initiative when it came to projects. He could have built rapport with the other managers so that when his name was floated as a manager, they saw him as somebody they wanted to collaborate with. He could have gathered more intel, which is number 4. Greg should have looked across the organization at what levers were available to him, his reputation, as well as others, to know when is the right time to ask for a promotion, right? He wants to go into management. Well, does the company make that decision once a year? Do they do that when it's warranted? Where is he in his salary range? He should have looked at his salary and the commensurate salary with a manager to see if there was some flexibility there, or is he at the top of his pay grade? He should have looked for internal sponsors who could have given him some of the backstory about the team that he might be leading if he was promoted into that manager role, who could give him some intel about the dynamics and why the previous manager hadn't worked out and what he could do differently to set himself up for success. Doing internal intel is really important because you can't assume because you're already an employee of the company that you're a shoe-in candidate for an internal role. If a promotion is on your horizon, do the due diligence. So I have 8 courses here on LinkedIn Learning. Another course that I have is titled Internal Interviewing, and it walks through all the questions that you need to be prepared for to set yourself up, not even just for a promotion, but a move inside the company. Because some of us move laterally, some of us look to go up. But that might be a really good course if you're looking to make a move inside the company. It's on LinkedIn Learning and it's called Internal Interviewing. But do the intel, understand your timing. If you're going for a raise, does your company typically do that after your performance evaluation? Would they be inclined to give you a raise after a major project or milestone is completed? What metrics in your performance are they looking for that therefore correlate to what type of a raise? How does all of that work? Very important to understand that intel. Number 5, some do's and don'ts. And we're wrapping it up here, but I want to give you the do's and don'ts. Definitely show appreciation for being considered. Even if you don't get the raise or you don't get the promotion, show respect, show professionalism, show some grace, and show some appreciation for the fact that you're being considered. Perhaps it's bad timing. Perhaps your goals are premature and you've got some work to do. Leaving in a huff is never a good strategy, but showing appreciation and grace certainly is. Make sure as you prepare your case for the raise or the promotion that you're really looking at how your past performance provides an indication of future success. I'll say that again. How does your past performance provide an indication of future success? Your boss, your boss's boss, they care about what you've done in the past. But interestingly, what they're looking for is how does that show us that with some more resources, some more compensation, some more responsibility, this person can go even further. As you're putting all of that together, as you're putting your case together and you're looking at the metrics of the projects that you've led and the tough times you've leaned in and the places that you've sort of stretched your skills, and you're making a case for more resources, a greater title, something like that, make sure that you understand where the employer's perspective is. They're thinking in terms of value. How can your value create even more value to the organization if you're given more compensation or a greater title or responsibility? Show respect for your boss. This is a tough conversation sometime, and I've had to have them when I was in-house. I still have to have them sometime with my own team, and especially if the conversation doesn't go in the direction that your employee wants. It's a tough conversation. So as gracious and professional as you can be, maybe your timing is off, but maybe 2 months later, your timing is better. And if you do a good job showing respect for your boss, they're going to remember that. And they might bring it up when you hadn't even thought about it. Understand that some of the decisions that you're asking your boss to make may not be decisions your boss can make. It might be above their pay grade, or there could be information about where the company is headed or some challenges that are coming up or growth and expansion that you might not be privy to. To understand that that's at play as well. Don't threaten to quit and throw papers in the air and slam doors if you don't get the raise or promotion. Don't talk about how you need the money because you bought an expensive house or you bought an expensive car. Those really aren't concerns of your employer. Be careful using words like deserve. That's a very judgment-laden word. And in my career, I've heard people use that, right? I deserve this. It's very subjective. And always show respect and polish. You can make decisions afterwards, but in the moment, show polish. It really does go a long way. So my final and 6th point is act like the leader you say you are. If you're trying to grow your career into a leadership role, Don't wait for the job title to change or your office to move down the hall. Start showing yourself as that leader today. Raise your hand and take the helm of key projects or initiatives. Don't wait to be tapped on the shoulder. Offer up. Offer your opinion and your perspective and your ideas in critical meetings. Show others that you're willing to mentor and coach and be inclusive. The qualities that define a leader in your organization are usually easy to spot. Look at the people that you admire in the company. Maybe find a mentor in the company who can help grow you into that leadership role. And then start displaying those characteristics and qualities before you get the title change. That makes it so much easier for your employer to slide you into that promotion if they already see you acting as somebody who would be in that role. And that also means online. And the social media space has proven so interesting and so fascinating, I think, especially in the last 25 months since we've all been going through this experience all over the world of the pandemic. Make sure you're showing up online as the leader you want to be too. If you're posting, casual threats, I'm going up for a promotion, and if I don't get the promotion, I'm going to quit my job. Don't ever assume that is private because you have Facebook privacy settings. Nothing is private if you've entered it into the internet. Show yourself as the kind of leader online that you're mirroring in person. Because if you remember, personal branding is not about perfection. We can't be perfect. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. But it is absolutely about consistency. And the people that are evaluating you for advancement, for additional funds and compensation, for any type of career growth that you're looking for, they are looking for consistency. If you say you want to be a leader, that you care about inclusivity and collaboration and growing the organization, then they're going to look for action that matches up with your values in order to give you credibility. It all ties together. So finally, before we get to questions, what we're talking about here when you've built your brand is reputation management. And reputation management can be as simple as asking yourself, would that post or comment be on brand for the way I want to be seen? If I collaborate with that team, is that going to represent me positively for the way that I want my boss to see me? If I'm pursuing a promotion, how can I start acting and showing up and building a reputation that's credible for the kind of leader that the company wants me to be and that I authentically want to anchor into? Keep yourself focused on your reputation. There is nothing more valuable to your career than your reputation. And if you're curious about personal branding and reputation management, the shameless plug I'm going to offer here is that my latest book, which came out last May, is called Control the Narrative. And it's everything you want to know about building your brand, pivoting or shifting your reputation, and yes, repairing your reputation if there's been a problem. We've covered a lot. I have talked really fast for 26 minutes, and I hope you've captured your notes. I want to hear from you. I want to know what questions are on your mind. So at this point, Sabrina is going to help me manage the questions by letting them pop up on the screen. And as I mentioned, I will stay online as long as you have questions, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. If you do have to jump off, thank you for joining us. I hope you've gotten some value out of today. Be sure to check out the Pathfinder scenarios that they have put together on LinkedIn Learning. And if you're not using LinkedIn Learning, head over there because it's amazing the content that's there. And I'll look forward to connecting with you in the future. But let's see what questions we have, Sabrina. And I'm told that there is a slight delay, so we will see if a question pops up. Then I will go ahead and answer those for you. I'm jumping over. So fun to be using new technology. I'll tell you a question I get a lot, which is, how long do you have to be in a job before it's okay to ask for a raise or a promotion? It really depends. I mean, I think there was a theory at one time that if it had only been 6 months, had you really proven yourself? But I know people who have been 6 months on a job and had a promotion and a raise within 6 months. I think what matters most is, are you delivering value? And if that value is seen and recognized and important to the company, then if the timing is appropriate, you can ask for it. I mean, the worst they can say is no. But there's a risk if you ask too often and if you ask too early. So I'd really make sure that you're clear on the value. And the value doesn't mean you took a pay decrease to take the job. Now you've been there 6 months and you want to bump up. That isn't what we're talking about in terms of value. Have you led projects? Have you helped others along? Have you contributed your thought leadership? Have you done things that the company puts an equal sign next to and says, that's important to us as a company, and therefore we will reward that and we will acknowledge that we invest in you to see more of that. So that's a question I get quite a bit. Let's see if we have a question. From a LinkedIn user, what if you do not receive an annual performance review and any considerations you have with your boss in regard to your accomplishments and potential for advancement fall on deaf ears? How should I approach this to make progress? Fabulous question. So there's a lot in that. So you're working for a company that doesn't have those institutional benchmarks that say we will review your compensation and your performance every 6 months or every 12 months. And it sounds like you might have even tried to have conversations about your accomplishments and your potential with your boss, and it hasn't gone well. A couple things, and I will say, if you're on LinkedIn Learning, watch the course about having an honest career conversation with your boss, because sometimes what we think we're doing well, if we don't understand the other person well enough, we're missing the mark, right? I'm speaking one language, you're hearing something totally different. I think I made perfect sense, and you're looking at me like I have 4 heads. So make sure that you really understand what matters to your boss, and not just functionally, but emotionally too, because we're all people and people have different things that drive them to make decisions. And make sure also that you've got that sort of case study pulled together. I joined the company and this was what was expected of me. In the last year, I have done these 4 things above and beyond what was expected of me. This is the value and the result that delivered to the company. Maybe you led a project that returned a certain financial value. Maybe you saved a critical client that was ready to leave the company. What's the value of saving that client? As clearly as you can, mark these out. And then maybe instead of saying, now I feel like I want a raise or I want a promotion, bring your boss into the conversation and ask, with all of this, what is the best strategy, in your opinion, for me to advance my career in this company? And get them to become an ally with you. Oftentimes people don't like to be told, right? You've done all this homework and now here's the request, and it's more of a directive than a request. So maybe bring them along and see if they can't co-create a strategy with you. There might be more buy-in. Pick your timing right. If your boss is headed out to a long overdue vacation, that's not the time to stop them and ask to have this conversation. And maybe some flattery, right? Ask how they got into their position. How did they get their advancement? What were some of the things they did right that you can learn from, and then really learn from it? I hope those questions help. Sounds like you work in a more fluid environment, and so some of these rules are going to be less institutionalized, but they can still be had. You absolutely can still have those conversations. Next question. Oh, we're getting some nice comments. Thank you. Oh, I see some familiar faces. Hello, Julian. Everyone's going under LinkedIn user. I want to know who LinkedIn users are. Sabrina, do we have another question? Because this is a tough subject. It really is. And sometimes it can be so tied to our sense of personal worth, right? That if I go and I ask for more and my employer tells me that they're not going to give me more, it can feel so personally shattering. But recognize this is business. This is business. And again, some of the decisions being made behind the scenes that you're not privy to could absolutely be impacting and influencing the way that your message is received and the tools that your boss has available to recognize you. I do see a question on here. It says, should you feel it okay to ask if you are the only one working third shift? So if you're the only one working in a specific situation and you have limited people that you can sort of push alongside with, you can always ask. There's no harm in asking. I always encourage people on my team, and I did when I worked in corporate, always encourage them to advocate for themselves, to ask, because there's a 50-50 chance that I could say yes or no. And if there's something driving that, I might even also look at other ways of rewarding them. So when I was in corporate, one of the questions that would come up a lot is the feeling that people only wanted a raise, that it was only money that people wanted. And I remember a conversation I had with a marketing manager who was on my team, and I was salary capped with everyone on my team, and I couldn't give this person more salary. And it turns out what was more important to this person as a single parent was some flexibility in their schedule. And that I could give. So while I was capped because of salary, I was able to give this single parent some flexibility in their schedule, which allowed them to reduce some of their childcare expenses and honestly made them a lot happier than a slight bump in salary might have offered after taxes. So having a good, honest, co-creating conversation can sometimes show you there are other tools that your manager has available rather than just a dollar per hour or a salary increase. So think about that as you move forward. And I am seeing, okay. Oh, Jeffrey, nice to see you. Jeffrey says, thank you for this. Tremendous value. A lot of golden nuggets. Anytime I learn. Okay, it's all flattering. Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you for your service. One of the many veterans that I have had the honor of working with over the years. Well, do we have any other questions, Sabrina? Because I certainly am happy to answer them. And Sabrina's going to post a link to a newsletter. So we're doing a newsletter here on LinkedIn, which a lot of you are signing up for. And we've seen just this swell of attention. Please check out LinkedIn Learning. There's so much content on there. I know when the pandemic hit, I started taking courses on things I had never had time before to take. I did introduction to photography. I learned a little bit more about project management and realized that is not my skill set. But there's so much learning on LinkedIn Learning, and it is all there for you. Like I mentioned, I have 8 courses. Would love to see you interacting with that. Check out the Pathfinders that LinkedIn Learning is doing because they're tailored exactly to what you need. And let's connect online. I hope this content has been helpful. It has been such an honor to be with you today and share these nuggets of wisdom, and please keep them coming. I hope to do more of these and would love to see you in a future broadcast. Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you to everyone on the LinkedIn team who I know is also on this meeting, and I wish you all a very safe and happy rest of your day. Bye.